Hi you guys, welcome to another dot drawing challenge. Today we are talking about light and shadow, how to create the illusion of 3 dimensions on a 2-dimensional piece of paper. Now I know what you're thinking, an egg? There's nothing more boring than an egg. But I hope the simple shape will demonstrate the dynamics of light and shadow so that you can understand these dynamics, so that you can draw them and even cheat a little bit to make it easier to create this effect. See what happens when I move my light source towards the egg. Look at how the shadow is lying across the egg and this curve here. Look at the cast shadow. See how when I bring it away and change the angle, the cast shadow will change shape. If I put it above the egg, the cast shadow is very short and squat and just below the egg. When I bring it over to the right, it gets a lot longer. When I bring the light closer, the contrast itself is greater. Now I want you to look at where the highlight is on the egg. This egg isn't very polished, but I see the highlight happening around here. Something you should know is the highlight can actually occur in a different place than what you see it, and it will still look realistic. You can kind of cheat a little bit with the highlight. What we're going to do is we are going to sketch it, and hopefully my table won't shake and the egg won't roll around. Basically, you draw your oval, your egg shape, and you can come back and correct some of it. So now you have your flat oval. And what we're going to do is we're going to shade it in order to make a 3-dimensional effect. So now I'm going to draw the cast shadow. This cast shadow is quite long. And I'm just going to loosely pencil it in. I'm using a black pencil. It's going to be a little bit more dark, but I want you to be able to see it. Now I'm going to draw the line of the shadow here. I'm not going to get into technical terms. I don't know them well enough myself. I know how to draw them, and if I read them, I would understand what they were talking about. And now I'm going to start just shading in along with the curve of the egg. So I'm going to go in the direction of the curve of the egg, and that's going to aid and helping it look more rounded. And I'm holding my pencil fairly loosely. I'm keeping my hand up. Now already, the egg is looking a lot more rounded just because of those lines that we're drawing. I'm also going to come in and work on the shadow. And you see, since this is the cast shadow, I'm actually just going straight across. That's just my personal choice of what I like to do. You can see the egg wiggling. I think it helps ground it more. Now, as we're looking at the egg, the darkest part is actually going to be right underneath at the base of the cast shadow. So I'm going to start darkening that in right there. Something you need to know about the way that light moves and reflects on things is this is the darkest part here. The shadow does not automatically go from light to dark. In some cases, because of the light reflecting off of the paper, this part is usually lighter and there's a reflection. And this part here, which is often called the core shadow, the darkest part of the shadow, and go ahead and call me out if I'm calling these things the wrong thing, is the darkest part. Now, for those of you who are doing this in your sketchbook, you'll have your value scale available. Go ahead and pull that out and make sure that as you're starting to the shadows and the shadow on the egg, that you're really getting into the darkest parts and that you're reserving some of the highlights. I could definitely go darker here. And you can see here all the time I'm not going this way. Sometimes I'll shade a different way, but as long as the main strokes are going around this way, I think that really helps. Now right now I'm using drawing paper, and even in your sketchbook you might have different textures there. So I'm going to show you a few things that you can do. I really like the texture. I think it's fine. But if you really want to make this look more realistic, and eggs actually do have a lot of texture on them, on the eggshell, and I can show you a few things that you can do to play around with your egg. As you're looking at this image, I'm going to point out a few things that I see. I see the light reflecting up here. I see the distinct line right here that I'm going to have to make a little darker. There's an inner oval here, and then out here there's darker areas. And then there's just areas of where the light is just bouncing off of things. And so this part isn't quite as dark. So there's kind of a darker outside to the shadow, and the shadow, because of the angle of the light, it kind of fades out. There's a distinct line here, but over here blends out into the paper. So in order to create that effect on the edge, here's a few things that you can do. First of all, you can take a piece of paper and you can just take the end and you can smudge it. And there actually are tools that you can use. I don't remember what they're called. I want to call them burnishing tools, but that's in pottery. But my favorite thing is just to use my finger. This is something you could also do in the core area to make it just seem more solid. And also along the egg. Don't forget to use your fingers and get dirty. They're going to get dirty anyways when you're drawing, so you might as well have a purpose behind it. The more time that you work on your egg and the shadow, the more time you observe the shadow and the highlights, the more three-dimensional, the more realistic your egg is going to look. So just keep on working at it. Keep on checking your value scale, making sure that you are getting in those darks and getting in those lights and maybe some of the other tones in between. Now it's okay to come back. This is a Prismacolor Cold Erase black colored pencil, so I can actually come back and erase some of those lines. And that's perfectly fine. I have no problem with erasing. I do encourage my younger art students to draw in black permanent marker because I think it makes a really good line, and younger kids tend to not be able to move past making it perfect. Adults can do that too. I encourage you to keep on working on your egg, but there are other things that you could work on besides the egg. You could draw something like an eyeball or a dinosaur. And once you decide what you're going to draw, decide where the light source is going to come from. Start by roughing in where your shadow is going to be in the direction that the form is. Don't forget your cast shadow, and just start playing around with it. There are other ways to create a shadow. Often artists will use cross-hatching in different forms to create the tone of the actual object and also the tone of the shadow. So go ahead and play around with light and shadow, draw, and have fun.